Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to follow on from my earlier video on the farming crisis and ask, rather tongue-in-cheek, if Nigel Farage can reasonably claim to be a key worker after he was criticised for making an unnecessary journey of 100 or so miles just to stand on a beach shouting at the sea. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, Nigel Farage, well-known funny bunny, in our hour of need, he gamely steps up to entertain the nation with his nonsense distracting us from our woes, except he's not really seeing it as entertainment. Essentially, he travelled in excess of 100 miles to stand on a beach and rant about migrants again. Poor Love is having a bit of a tough time at the moment. You've got a feel for him. Right now, he was supposed to be touring America, making absolutely millions on the speech circuit, but then travel restrictions put a stop to that. Naturally, he has been criticised for making such a journey in breach of the movement restrictions during the lockdown. His defence? That he is a key worker. But he's not really a worker at all. I mean, some people pointed out, well, you're not a journalist, you're a politician. But he's not a politician. I don't think he's a politician anyway. He was whilst he was an MEP. But he doesn't have that role anymore. There are no British MEPs. Does the leader of the Brexit party make him a politician? I don't think so. Anyone can form a political party. You can just say you're the leader of a political party. It doesn't make you a politician. I would argue that to be a politician, you have to hold elected office or be appointed to some political office in countries where offices exist without elections. For example, the UK. Not all positions are democratic decided here, but Farage hasn't been appointed to one of those either. So is he setting himself up as a journalist now? Is this what he means by being a key worker? I mean, journalists are key workers, very important at this time. As people have noted, the British media have not exactly covered themselves in glory, but it is a very important job to do, particularly in an emergency. And it's not like there's any accreditation needed to be a journalist. I could argue that I'm a journalist. I report on the news on a daily basis, even though it's not generally how I describe myself. And some people who are accepted as journalists do just make stuff up. They don't actually just report the news, which is what you'd expect a journalist to do. They just make up any old rubbish rather than reporting on the actual news. Boris Johnson did this during his years as a journalist, for example. So let's say I accept that he's now working as a journalist, one of those who make stuff up. Not going to argue with that assertion at all, so I'm happy to say that he's a key worker on that basis. Others can argue. I'm happy to accept his statement there. But does that justify the 100-mile journey? Now, there are going to be some journalists who have to make significant journeys, even now, in order to be able to report on an important story. That would be fine for me. As long as they're taking reasonable precautions and there is a need to make that journey. What wouldn't be acceptable for me is just going along for the scenery. You know, journalists do this sometimes. They want to report on a particular thing. They don't need to go to the place to get the story. They already have the story. They just want to go there for the scenery to show that they're in that place. And that's fine during normal times, but not acceptable these days. So was Nigel Farage making the journey because it was necessary for his story? Was he going there to speak to a person or to record something, some event that wouldn't happen at any other time? No, he was just recording the sea whilst he was shouting. Actually, I say he was shouting at the sea. He had his back to the sea, so he was actually sulking with the sea, shouting at the sea with his back turned to it. So no, he didn't need to go there. Apparently, he was supposed to be filming the swarms of migrants coming from, you know, into Britain from the south of England on the coastline. And he was actually reporting, oh, it's worse than I thought. And I'm thinking, mind me, this must be good. There must be migrants just streaming out of the waters. No, he was there all day, didn't film a single one. So he was essentially just there to stand on a beach shouting at the sea. That was it. I mean, Nige, mate, you don't have to be at the beach for the scenery. I'm in a dining room here. Take the hint, pal. In fact, if he's at a loose end, and let's say he's just struggling to control the boredom, and that's why he needed to go out for a whole day just to record a few minutes worth of footage, then as a mobile Brexit supporter with time on his hands, what he really ought to be doing is taking a basket down to the nearest farm and helping pick fruit and veg that is currently going to waste on British farms. And he lives in Kent. Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an expert on the south of England, but isn't Kent known as the Garden of England? It's full of farms. They're all over the place. You wouldn't need to travel very far at all to be able to get to a farm where they need someone to pick fruit and veg. So he can argue he's a key worker, that's fine. But I don't think the journey was a necessary part of his job. He could have just projected an image of the sea behind him and shouted at that from the comfort of his own dining room. So there's absolutely no justification for making that journey. But on a final serious note, this does mean that British food is rotting in the fields, and it's doing so now. Yes, the current crisis is coronavirus related and would have existed anyway and might well exist in other countries as well, which actually isn't helpful to us either, because not only will we have less food coming from British farms, we may struggle to import food to make up for it as well. But the point is that this is the exact situations that Brexiteers like Nigel Farage have called for. And we're going to see next year again if they get their way. This is just a taste of what Brexit actually means. It means the death of British farming and a greater reliance on food from the EU. But those are my thoughts on the subject. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.